The UDRcast is not affiliated and does not represent any 12-step fellowship. I, Bill Ward, the host of the UDRcast, will be sharing my experience and my journey of recovery. That does include, but is not limited to, the literature contained in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps. Our guests will be sharing their own path to recovery and what has worked for them. The UDRcast encourages and supports all paths to recovery. Welcome everybody to the UDRcast. UDR stands for Uncover, Discover, and Recover. My name is Bill Ward, and I'm coming to you from the recovery capital of Canada, Calgary, Alberta. Here we are going to discuss everything recovery, different perspectives, different experiences, both with the people I know and with others from around the world. If you resonate with anything you've heard on this episode today, we ask that you share it with anyone who you think may benefit from it. If you have any questions or comments, please find us at billward.life and send us a message in the info section. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you are interested in more recovery content, you can find the buttons for the YouTube channel and other social media outlets on the homepage, and you will be redirected to those platforms. We can recover, one person, one family, one community at a time. Creator, I thank you for this beautiful day. I thank you for the gift of life that you've given me and given all of us. I just ask for your guidance tonight. I ask for your help and your experiences in my life that I can bring to the table to be able to better serve this literature and this book that changed my life. Creator, I ask for you to protect all the people in the study, that they get home safe. And that we all focus on the other alcoholics out there still suffering, and just the people in general in life that are suffering, that don't have the ability to have this, what we have, that we can be shining lights for people no matter where they are in their life. I thank you, Creator, for the gift that you've given me to be here today and to be surrounded by such lovely people. I thank you, Creator. Hi. I just want to add a quick prayer for my dad. He called me right before I came in here when I was on the phone, and he just let me know he was on his way to the hospital in an ambulance. He had fainted almost while he was driving on 16th Ave, and then he made it home, and then he didn't feel right, so he got the ambulance to come and get him. So he's at the hospital right now just getting checked out, but whatever extra prayers you might have, just send them to my dad. Okay, so we're on step 4. We're going to touch on a little bit of the step 3. The step 3 prayer I'm going to talk about, and then we're going to read into the 4, and then we'll get into this 4 tonight. So we're on page 63. We finished off last week with, everyone's got a book, right? Yeah, you need one? So we finished off last week with the step 3 prayer. It was pretty powerful on our knees. I think it was 4 or 5 of us prayed, and I could feel that pretty powerfully. And I wanted to come back to this prayer and kind of dissect what this actual prayer is, right? We talk about the step 3 prayer. Everybody reads the prayer, but it's been my experience as a sponsor and as a member of the program that a lot of people don't really know what this prayer actually means, right? And whatever it means to you at the time that you read it is great, but I want to give you some more in-depth inner knowledge or ideas of what this prayer is actually saying and telling us. I talk a lot about this prayer being so much different than the step 7 prayer. They looked, when you put them side by side and you read them, they're pretty much the same prayer. But when you dissect these two prayers apart, they're way different prayers. Okay? So, but we'll start with the step 3 prayer. So we are now at step 3. So it doesn't say that we're done step 3. We're never really done step 3. As we go through our first round of the program, we surrender and we try our best, but step 3 is never ending. It will never end. And step 3 is actually consummated through the understanding of step 6. And step 3 is actually applied in the practical application of step 10. Okay? And when I say it's applied, there's an actual process of step 10 that allows you to identify your will. It gives you the outline of what to do in the moment when you discover your will, and then the results or the principles of the program. So you don't need to just do your steps and go into life and just guess. Oh, this is God's will for me. Oh, that's not God's will. Yeah, you can do that to some extent, but you don't need to. If you follow the clear-cut directions, your path towards Creator, your path away from the bondage of self comes so much quicker than if you just go out and self-will the principles, I'll say it. Going out and just self-willing the principles into your life takes a long time to get what you're looking for, honestly. And you'll get to the place where you're like, is this all fucking recovery is? But no, there's so much more to recovery than living a life based on what you think God's will is and still struggling and running into these walls and shit that you don't need to run into. We follow the directions. That's why I did the original manuscript, because it was really clear on what directions we're here to follow. If you want what we have and you want to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to follow directions. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our directions. And it talks about directions all through that original manuscript. So we are now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. We thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready, that we could last abandon ourselves utterly to him. We found it very desirable to take the spiritual step with an understanding person, such as our wife, best friend, or spiritual advisor. But it's better to meet God alone than with someone who might misunderstand. The wording was, of course, quite optional, so long as we expressed the idea, voicing it without reservation. This was only a beginning. That's really important. Though if honestly and humbly made, an effect, sometimes a very great one, was felt at once. Okay, so as we look at this prayer, it's God, I'm offering myself to thee. So we're on our knees and we're making an offer saying, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to do this. And like Lyle talked about last week, the paragraph up at the top is actually kind of what we're talking about, right? It talks about, when we sincerely take the position. So it's talking about taking the position. Does anyone remember what position we're taking?
To be God's agent?
Pardon me?
To be God's agent?
Yes. To be God's agent. To go to work for God. Now he's the Father, I am his child, and now that's the deal. In the original manuscript, it said, let's get that simple relationship straight, right? Knowing that I don't run the show anymore, okay? So it talks about sincerely taking the position, sincerely. And when you look at the word sincerely and you look it up, the component of honestly is a huge component of sincere. Honestly taking that step and letting God actually run the show. Not just a theoretical idea that he's going to run the show. And when I say theoretical idea, earlier in the step 3 chapter, it talked about on this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch which we pass through to freedom. And it talks about the concept of God, the concept that God's the Father, the concept that he is the director and I'm the agent. If it's just a concept and we don't take action in the moment to make it actually turn over, then we're living our lives in our own self-will. Our ego will attach to the ideal that we're turning it over to God, and we're not actually turning it over to God. And the proof of this is I see so many people come into the program, they have this theory of God, and then they're drunk. And it's fucking yesterday at the meeting, these guys were so praising God and how their life is so changed and that God is the reason why they're sober today, and then they're drunk the next day. And as you go into rooms and you see this happen over and over and over and over, I want you to go, fuck, is that their ego attaching to the ideal of God? And if the ego's attaching to the ideal of God, then really what that is they're using God as an effective mental defense against the first drink. And God, that ideal of God might work for a while, okay? But what does the book say? It says at a certain point, the alcoholic will have no effective mental defense against the first drink. His defense must come from God. So back in the Roland Hazard story in step 1, and there's a solution, when Carl Jung was telling Roland Hazard, like, you know, you need a vital spiritual experience. And Roland Hazard's like, okay, that sounds great. I have God. I believe in religion. And then the doctor said, although your religious convictions are good, Roland, it does not meet the necessary vital spiritual experience that you need. Meaning, Roland, even though you have a concept of God, it does not meet what you need. You need to learn how to turn your will and your life over to the care of God. And then he goes on to describe to Roland what the vital spiritual experience is. And he says your attitudes, your ideas, and your emotions that have been guiding your life, you have to expose those things and you have to cast them aside. And you have to allow this new set of conceptions, motives, and ideas to dominate your life. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about putting in the action way more than a theory. Through the action of bringing God into the ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which is when you're in step 10, you're aware of the ideas and the emotions and the attitudes if you're following the process. And then you got the process, and at the end of it is God's will, not yours. The problem with God's will and not your will is you don't always get what you want. And in step 3, it says that. It says, are these not the things that he wants? It's the things that we want is what we're trying to turn over. And the promise is if I follow God's direction, it says right here, I will necessarily be provided with what I need. But I got to do 2 things to get this pay, because God's going to pay me with what I need if I stay close to him and I perform his work well. So I have to stay close to God through the spiritual disciplines, through the prayers, through the meditations, and then understanding the altruistic part of the program. The altruistic part, back in the doctor's opinion, it said we work out our solution on the spiritual and altruistic plane. Spiritual meaning follow your spiritual disciplines as dictated in this book. And once you get those disciplines good, then you can see quickly where other religious people are right. You can expand from there and use other methods of other religions or other spiritual disciplines and bring those into your spirituality. But then the altruistic part is important. Because altruism, by definition, means unselfishly devoting oneself to the welfare, happiness, and well-being of others. So just because you go and help somebody, looking for a pat on the back or to make yourself feel good, doesn't make it altruistic. Because you're not really unselfishly devoting yourself to the welfare, happiness, and well-being of others. If you're still looking for validation out of helping somebody, then the motive is still self. Down the road is you keep doing altruistic actions. So through altruistic actions, which is helping people, you will become altruistic. But that's not the only thing. Like there's a part here that the program, and most people don't really get about the program. Altruism also has to do with my interaction with you here right now. And if I want to be angry at you and tell you what I feel about your opinion on something, I need to be aware of that in the moment, and I need to ask God to help me because I'm going to use anger, I'm going to use judgment, I'm using contempt, I'm basing it in fear, and I want to tell you something. So in that moment, in a step 10, I'm like, okay, God, can you please help me not be judgmental? Creator, use your power to calm me down so I don't act out. So what I'm doing in that moment is I'm doing an altruistic act because I'm not going to lay what I think on you and hurt you. So I'm doing an altruistic act in that moment. So I may not be unselfishly devoting myself to the welfare, happiness, and well-being of you at that moment, But by me not saying anything, I'm actually not making anything worse. But down the road, as you follow these processes, you'll get into that exact same position, and you won't even want to get mad at the person. You won't have the desire to yell at them at all, because you'll have worked this process, and in that moment, you'll be working altruistically because you don't have a desire to say anything about what their opinion is. And you'll understand that all people are emotionally ill, spiritually sick, and frequently wrong, just like you. And then you can listen with compassion. And if they even say something nasty about you, it's like you can be like, it's not even my shit. It's their shit. So the altruistic component in the moment is really important. And that's what this prayer is kind of getting at. So back to the prayer. I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help with thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. As we're asking God to build with us and do with us as he will, you guys might have heard me talk about this before, but it's like a renovation, right? It's like if something's going to get rebuilt, you have to strip down what the old part of it was. So if this building is going to get a full renovation, they shut everything down, everyone leaves, and then the wrecking crew comes in here and they start stripping down the drywall, ripping off light fixtures, pulling up the floor, tearing off door frames, doors, and they strip it down to bare skeleton again. That's what's happening with us as we go through these processes, if we're willing to. And then when they rebuild this place, you got the state-of-the-art light fixtures, you got the state-of-the-art floor, you got the best doors, best door frames, the nicest locks, you got electric locks, you got the nicest lights, and everything's better than it's ever been. But it took the building, went through a lot of pain on the demolition, and then little piece by piece by piece, it got rebuilt to the best version of itself that it was ever been in. And that's what's going to happen with us. And I see people that come into the program and they really want this so bad, and they'll get on the knees and they'll make this commitment. I offer myself, build with me, do with me as thou wilt. And then in their mind, they think that everything's just going to go hunky-dory the way that they want it to go. That's not how this works. Because if you have patterns over your life that you've developed, defense mechanisms that fucking work for you at some point, whether it be anger or manipulation or sexual prowess or whatever it might be, and you have to tear those down to not get it is mind and emotionally manipulate the world to give you what it is that you think, and you have to lay those tools down, you got to find a new way. It's fucking hard. And if you're using fear to use all those coping mechanism tools, and now you got to try to switch it and use love, holy fuck, that's hard shit. So the building with you and doing with you as thou wilt is fucking hard work. So I see people come in and they make this commitment, and then they go out into life into the recovery, and fucking shit starts getting bad. And they're like, what's going on? Well, you made a commitment to Creator to build with you, do with you as he will. Not as you think he should do, because through the experiences in your life that you go through is your lesson. That's now back to the last 2 pages of We Agnostics. What is this but a miracle of healing? Circumstances made him willing to believe. So this program and God is a miracle of healing. And through each circumstance that you're presented in your life, you have an opportunity to heal. If you navigate the challenge in the right way with love, you can heal a little tiny bit by a little tiny bit. And the more that you surrender to these moments and bring God in, but sometimes it doesn't make sense, right? As you're working in certain situations where maybe somebody's yelling at you and calling you down or something, right? And then you're like, well, I got to stand up for myself. And no, fuck you, fuck you. No, that's where common sense will thus become uncommon sense. Because if you go always at them with love, it will disintegrate the force and the pride and the lower states of consciousness that they're using to try to manipulate you. But we're so used to manipulation, force, that we think that that's what life is. But really, when you do that, you're going against your own consciousness because you're not working with love, and you have love in here that's guiding you. But it's covered up. The fundamental of God is within every man, woman, and child, but it's often obscured, covered up by calamity, pomp, and worship of other things. So it's the pomp and the worship of other things that creates the calamity that covers up that spirit. And when you go against the spirit, you actually create a lot of negative shame in your own being. But you don't know that because you've been working in a system, society, that operates the way that we've always operated. So you're going to get validated by you being mean back to them, by your friend. Oh, this is what they said to me, and this is what I said back to them. Well, I would have said the same thing. What a fucking asshole. So the society that we live in has these belief systems already. So we have to individually live on a different basis. We got to level ourselves up and not go down to those levels, right? And through the lessons, you will level up. In the step 11, it talks about our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane, closer to God, when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. So once you understand self and how it manifests in your life, you can raise your level of consciousness and be placed on a higher plane. And then you'll understand people on the lower plane, and you'll understand them because you've been there. The thing about people on a lower plane is they don't understand the higher plane. But because we've grown through the lower planes, we understand lower planes. Okay? So relieve me of the bondage of self. Because we all know that we are stuck to the bondage of self. We are concerned, like the step 3 says, are most of us not concerned with ourselves, our own resentment, our own self-pity, our own possessions, our own lives, our own. Where did we learn this way of thinking? In society again. Right from birth. Get this for you, do this for you, have this for you, make this money for you, do this for you, you know. And all the while, we're stepping on the toes of our fellows. And we're going against our core again. And then it's validated, so we don't really see it with the logical mind. But it's something that you can't really see until you work through the program of ways and you clear some of the calamity and the shit out. Then you start seeing the shame. And as we keep a clean house over years of being in this program, keeping your clean inner house, you're able to deal with the shit when the shit's coming up. The guilt and the shame. Stepping on the toes of your fellows over the years that you validated through what I call a lens of false integrity. We have to validate those things as we're living this life and look in the mirror with that excuse, which is a lie really, because we need to be able to live with ourselves. So it's false integrity. It's not built in truth and it's not built in honesty. It's built in false honesty and false integrity. But the world lives there. Okay? So it's not really in some ways our fault. So.
Half of the, well, 95% of the room lives in that world.
Yeah.
There's only a few of the recovered people that actually live in the world you're talking about.
Right. And that's a good point. And I do bring that up as you guys well know, like most of the rooms aren't talking about what we're talking about here today. And when I say the journey with God and with authentic truth is a lonely road, it is a lonely road by the looks of it. But when you're connected with your God and you're living in that truth of what it is, what love is and what God is and being of service, all that condemnation or negative energy that comes at you, it doesn't really do what it used to do anyway. So a guy like Lyle can go up, stand at the podium, speak his truth, and walk out of there without a thought on his mind because he's good with who he is, right? And Barb, and myself, and Michael, and Brandon, and whoever. Like we just know this. And the fellowship you crave will grow up about you. So what I want to re-emphasize, like I did a couple weeks ago, I think, is as you're walking this path of your own truth, you stand up in that truth. And when you need to say something that actually you might not have said before because you didn't want to get into some type of conflict with somebody, or you didn't want to look a certain way or whatever, it's very important that you call on God's power and strength and you do speak up in a kind and loving way. Whatever your truth is today, in that moment, whenever that is in that situation, whether it's at home with your partner, or it's at work, or it's at school, or it's in society, you stand in that truth. Because that truth, it might not be the real truth based in love and kindness, but it's your truth on the journey to truth. But you got to be open-minded enough to know that your truth might change in a week, or a month, or a year. And be open to accept a new idea or a new way. But as you go down the road of truth, standing in your truth along the way, you'll get to the place where you're living in like authentic truth, where it is love. And if you got to justify your truth along the way, typically if you're justifying your truth, you're still living in parts of the brokenness of yourself, which is okay because we're on a journey of healing. But then you speak up in your next incident where you need truth, and then you've healed a little millimeter or maybe 10 millimeters or maybe a fucking mile. But you're in a new truth and you've healed that much, but you don't know it because the healing's all going in your subconscious. But you do know it because you're more okay in your own skin. So it's a journey, okay? So let's keep going. I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties. What does that line mean? Anybody? Take away my difficulties. Take away my defects of character that cause me all my difficulties. Because it is my difficulty, it is my fear, it's my resentments, it's my sex conduct, it's all of these manifestations of many different behaviors based in selfishness that actually cause the difficulties in my life. There's another component here that a lot of new people, when they first read this, will think, and it's take away my problems. Take away my problems in my life so that I can better be of service. Okay? So you can take that attitude if you want at first when you're here, right? It's kind of based in some selfishness, but at the end of the day, who cares? At least it's a little bit closer to the truth than it was when you before you read the prayer, right? But really, to me, it's take away my difficulties that actually cause me all my difficulties. Me living in self-centered fear always causes most of my problems in my life. And everything we talk about here, at the very root of it, is self-centered fear. Okay? And from the self-centered fear, it actually goes into your instincts. And there's 4 instincts. Okay? The 4 instincts are the desire for sex relation, emotional, material security, and companionship. And Bill describes those really detailed in the step 4 and the 12 and 12 on the first page and a half. And we'll touch on that once we get into the columns, in the resentment columns. But now on to the next piece here. Let's relieve ourselves of the bondage of self. Let's take away these difficulties, God. Let's fucking build with me, do with me as thou wilt. For what? For what reason? So I can be of fucking service. So many people come here and they do this work. They do it for one reason. For themselves. So they can get happy. And I'll tell you right now, if you just come here and you just do this work for you to get fucking happy, you ever held a handful of sand in your hand and squeezed it? There goes the happiness. And when you open your hand, there's nothing fucking left. Because that's not what this is about. We don't come here and take like we always have. We come here and we learn what we're doing here so that we can go and be of service to people. And it is through service, a life of service, that you will find everything that you ever wanted through the world of the material by trying to mind and emotionally manipulate everybody so you could draw the emotional goods that you wanted. But you find it through service. And then as you work more in the altruism in the service, you raise your level of consciousness. And now you're vibrating up here. So the fellowship you crave now grows up about you. But the fellowship you crave in this program is about 5% only. Only about 5% of the people live in the fellowship of the Spirit. Okay? And here's some proof to that. 5% of the people do 95% of the work in the program. When you look at who keeps the meetings going, who does the service, who's sponsoring, who's doing all this, 5% of the people do 95% of the work in the program. The other 95% do 5%. And when you look at the rates of recovery, 5 people out of 100 make it to a year. 2.5 make it to 5 years. So it all kind of calibrates itself properly so that you can see the truth of this. And so if you're only 5% of the 100% and you're vibrating up here, then you got 95% of the people not doing this. Which is fine. That's fucking fine. Wherever anyone's at, that's totally cool. But my job, his job is to get you guys to level up so that you're of service. In the We Agnostic chapter, it talked about being intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation. That's what we're trying to be. We're trying to be spearheads. Think of a spear, the point of it. You're the point of the spear. You're the love in this world, because that is God. So we're spearheads for God's ever-advancing creation of love. And now we go out from ourselves and we be that shining light. And through the shining light, so like just for me, for example, I shine my light, and now I got all you guys here, and I can give you some of the light. And now you guys are learning what I've learned, and you guys go give that light to other people. Through you giving the light to other people, you gain an understanding and effectiveness. You place your thought life on a higher plane. You start healing. You start doing all the things that I've done. And then you guys go do it. And then in 2 or 3 or 5 years, you're doing big book studies. And you're doing them how they're actually supposed to be done in a way, because now people are getting the real program. It's not a bunch of people just bullshitting about their fucking day and how their fucking cat pissed on their bed. And you know what I mean? So the experience of what we're doing here is lived in life. And then as you live that, it's like, fuck, that's what he was talking about. That's what's happening.
It's funny how an experience brings you to exactly what we were talking about. It's so funny how that happens, I think. Because I wouldn't understand it until I experienced whatever I had to experience to get it, to actually get it. And then I'm like, yes.
Right. And I always say, God is an experience. And once you experience the experience of God, you can't really even explain it. Because God is unexplainable, right? And the God dope is what will pull you along, right? It's like having a main line of fucking God dope in your vein. It's not fentanyl anymore. It's fucking God dope. And that's better than any dope I ever did. And it comes through the altruistic action of service. And so, yeah, sponsorship's great, right? We don't all have to just do sponsorship either, right? I think it's huge to your healing. But maybe some of your gifts are more well-served doing other types of service, right? But don't let your mind trick you and bullshit you and give you the validation that you can't do whatever service it is. Because the mind will trick you, okay? So let's keep reading. So take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness. Victory over them. What does victory mean? A fight. I mean, it's ensuing a fight right there. Where's the fight? It's inside of us. In the steps, it happens in step 10. What's the principle behind step 10? Principle. Labeled principle in the program. Step 10. Perseverance. Step 10 is perseverance, which you could define as to fight through. Because that is where I identify the defect of character in the moment first thing I do is I turn to God. I talk to somebody immediately. I make amends quickly if I have harmed anyone. And then I resolutely turn my thoughts to someone I can help. There's the process. No, it doesn't matter what you like.
I know, I just is uncomfortable because it was my old way. Else besides
Well, if you're arguing with other people to make your point come across,
right,
then there is a fight, and the fight's in your own head.
it's a debate.
Right.
Yeah. But I
'Cause
don't want
what it looks like is you're conflicted with this person and their views. But you're not really conflicted with them. That's not where the fight is. The fight's in here.
that. Okay, now that.
And when the fight's in here, you take it out here. Why are you fighting in here? Because you're stuck in an ideal of something that you think it should be a certain way. And that's your idea. So you don't have respect for other people's shortcomings, viewpoints, and their opinions. And if you do have respect for their shortcomings, viewpoints, and opinions, it's an attitude that makes you more useful to God's kids. But how do you get there? Comes through continuous, persistent, consistent commitment to do your step 10. And what you're actually doing is you're changing. Through the change, like it says in step 10, we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. You will cease fighting you. And when you cease fighting you cease fighting me, and you will never fight alcohol again. Because if you fight you and you fight other people, guaranteed you're living in self and the spiritual malady, and you will succumb to the desire again. Because you're restless, irritable, discontent, and succumbed means failed to resist. Hence, powerless. Living in self will render you powerless, and your little dial in the back of your mind goes, I need relief, I need it now, it's always giving it to me. Alcohol, boom, I'm drinking. How the fuck did this happen? Right. Because you're taught in the society to figure shit out.
Right.
You're constantly trying to figure fucking shit out. Well, down the road, that will calm down. Because you're trained, your ingrained patterns in your inner being is trained you to figure shit out. In the chapter, We Agnostics, it says logic. It's great stuff. We like it. We still like it. It is not by mistake that we've been given the ability to examine the evidence of our senses, to come up with reasonable approach and interpretation, to examine the evidence of our senses. So you're examining everything based on everything you've been taught for your whole life, and you're trying to fucking figure it out. And you might be more of an intellectual than other people, so you're constantly trying to figure it out, right? But over time, that shit calms down. And for people like you, meditation is fucking paramount importance. And people like you won't be able to meditate, and then they're like, I can't meditate.
You're saying.
Right. So you're on the right path, right? So you're going to stand in your truth in that moment, and you're going to speak your truth, and that's it.
Right.
But you're going to try at some point to bring God in and work on that. And that's why I say we heal millimeter by millimeter, because it's a fucking long road to get rid of that. It's tiny little bits and pieces, and you might go, am I even gaining any progress? Well, when you look at 10 millimeters on a fucking stick, 10 millimeters you can barely see. But it is actually movement, right? So maybe you move 10 millimeters in a year on that. Well, at least you move 10 millimeters, right? Maybe then year 2 you've moved 30 millimeters. But maybe by 10 years in, you're like, fuck, I get it. I'm fucking there. Because this isn't an overnight matter. It fucking happens over time. But it's up to you and your willingness. That's why I say step 3 is good. Step 6, ideology, is really important. Because any person capable of enough willingness, rigorous honesty, to try repeatedly step 6 on all your faults without reservation. So you try repeatedly, over and over and over and over, without reservation, repeatedly, on all your faults, not some of them. That is the step that separates the men from the boys. So your defect is based in, I want to be right and I want to be understood. And I'll tell you, one of my biggest defects is I want to be understood too. It's taken a long time to millimeter by millimeter that one into change. And it's not just going to go away just because you want it to. It goes away with the work that you put in over time. So you're on the right track. You just got to keep going. That's it. And you're not making mistakes. So when you get into those little fights, be aware of your mind, because there's going to be times where you're like, okay, I know I shouldn't say anything, but here I go. Blah, 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 blah. And so just quickly before I move on, humility. And I keep talking about step 6, okay? This is my version. There's 3 levels of humility. There's fucking humiliation, humble through pain, and the 3rd level is a desire to seek and do God's will. Step 6 is about the 2 lower levels of humility. It's about humiliation and fucking pain. And as you go into these circumstances and you're learning the lessons the fucking hard way, but you're learning. The goal is to get to the altruism without reservation, so that you don't need to act in your own selfishness and your own self-righteousness and be right. You can just do it, okay, without reservation. You're fucking, I like that take, and leave it alone. The without reservation part in that line is important, because we might want to be nice and sincere and kind, but then the reservation fucks us, because it's like, what am I going to lose? What am I not going to get? Why am I not being heard? They need to hear what I got to say. Even though in that moment you were like, okay, maybe I should not say anything. Why I want you to be aware of what you're doing in those moments is because you'll catch it. And you'll see it later that, fuck, I knew that I shouldn't say anything, and then I did, and now I'm fucking humiliated, and I'm learning through the pain, but I should have listened to that little voice that told me right before I beaked off. Changing that behavior from self-righteousness to acceptance. And admitting that is good, because that's part of it. If you don't admit what it is that's wrong, you can't work towards its correction. So admitting that is really good. And that is the 4th column. What's your part? Well, I do this because I want to be heard. But, okay, that's cool in your first set of steps in your 4th column. But you need to do more than just see that. It's, where's it coming from? Well, the 3rd column. The 3rd column is those instincts I told you about. It's all based in your sex relation, emotional security, companionship, or material security. It's probably based in your emotional security. I found that most of all of it is based on some type of emotional insecurity or seeking a security. But that only comes through time. You can't possibly learn everything that we're doing here in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, right? I know Lyle took him like 20 years, and then he had a spiritual awakening and everything changed, right? So it's time, right? It takes time. So let's keep going. So, may I do thy will always. We thought well before taking the step, making sure we were ready, that we could last abandon ourselves utterly to him. Utterly means like fully and completely. And that essentially is the step 7 surrender. We're trying to get to the level of surrender that step 7 talks about. So I'm going to skip that last paragraph. Let's go on to the step 4 part. Next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning. Stop. We launched. Think about the word launched. Next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action. Think about that. Launching on a course of vigorous action. Once we do the step 3 prayer, the book, the directions, this is directions, it says we don't fuck around, we don't wait, we launch on this course of vigorous action. It doesn't say we fuck around and wait 2 months and go to meetings. The thing about this prayer is when you say it, it could have a great effect on you. It changes people's perceptions like right now. And then they think that's the spiritual awakening because I don't want to drink. I'm good. I don't want to drink anymore. I think I'm fucking okay. And he put me on a lie detector test and I know that I don't want to drink. you're on step fucking 3. But people think that, okay? And then they take the spiritual experience in step 3 as the spiritual experience because they don't fucking get it. And then they drink again. So we have to launch on this course of vigorous action because time is important. Momentum is important. Because if you don't work the momentum of this, self is what is cunning, baffling, and powerful. Self sneaks back in and it starts running the show again. And your ego thinks that God's running the show. And because you're praying in the morning and you're praying at night and you're still sober, thank God, God's got me. But really, in between that, you're running your own life. You're still fucking getting in fights. You're fighting everyone and everything. You're fucking judging people at the meetings. You're pissed off at your boss. Your fucking cat's fucking pissing on your leg. You know, like everything's still happening to you. So the ego attaches to that ideal of God, but you're still running your own life. And then what happens? The guy's fucking drunk. Okay? So we launch on this personal house cleaning, of which many of us have never attempted. No one ever attempted this before they got here. People don't fucking do personal inventory before they burn down their lives. No one I know anyway. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, the decision of step 3 is vital. And again, what does vital mean? Life. Giving of life. This decision that you make to turn your will and your life over will give you the best life that you could dream of. But also in the context of it here, is it's vital. It means it's really important. And it's a crucial part of this program. The work doesn't even start till step 4. And now we're finally at the work. But we just spent 50 some pages in step 1, 2, and 3. Probably 60 some pages, right? Well, we're on page 64. So we spent 63 pages plus the doctor's opinion before we even got to the fucking work in the program. And remember, in step 1, it says, none of us like the self-searching leveling of our pride, admissions of our shortcomings that this process requires for its successful consummation. What it says in step 1 is, you don't fucking get to begin this journey until step 4 and 5. That's what it's saying. That's where it begins. Okay. It will have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves that have been blocking us. And trust me, we need this to take permanent effect. So we need to face these things in ourselves, the defect of character, our difficulties, the bondage of self that blocks us. Our liquor was but a symptom. Boom, there it is again. Liquor is a symptom. It's not the problem. Never was, never will be for us alcoholics. So we had to get down to the causes and conditions. Now that's saying, here's why you actually drink. Let's get down to the causes and conditions of why I actually pick up a drink and a drug. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. A business, you're the business, which takes no regular inventory, usually goes broke. And think about it. You come in here spiritually, emotionally, mentally, a lot of times financially bankrupt. Because we've never been able to take inventory of ourselves. We just live our life on our own self-will, and our decisions get us here, and we are fucking broken when we get here. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding, fact-facing process. It is an effort to discover the truth about stock in trade. One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods and to get rid of them promptly without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about the values. So this process is about a fact finding. So we're going to write down all the facts. We're going to face the facts. We're going to look at the truth about stock in trade, the truth about you. Maybe not your truth, but the truth. In an effort to find these damaged and unsaleable goods, your defects of character, your self-centered fear, your manipulation, the way that you handle life and communicate in relationships and resent people, and we're going to find these damaged and unsaleable goods, these manifestations of your brokenness of self, and try to discard them promptly without regret. That's hard to do, okay? And if we are to be successful, we cannot bullshit ourselves about the values. The thing about not bullshitting ourselves about the values is the alcoholic is incapable of honesty on his own. He will rationalize and justify the most errant bullshit to suit his actions in his life and his inaction in his life. The alcoholic life is the only normal one, even in sobriety. So how do we fucking hold ourselves accountable if I'm not able to be honest by myself? I use pillars. Pillars is massively important. Inventory. Getting rigorously honest. Rigorous means accurate. Looking at the truth. I cannot fool myself about the values. Christine just admitted that she can't let that go. So she's admitting that. She's not fooling herself about that. Is she ready to let it go? Can she let it go? No. But at least she's there and she's like, fucking, this is hurting me and other people. I don't fucking like it, but I can't fucking change it yet. That's fine. At least she's fucking being honest about the values. That's the most important thing. A lot of people will not admit that they have lust issues because that's not deemed like societally normal. You know, people don't want to admit that they're angry because people that are angry get looked at in a certain way. If you don't admit your anger, if you don't admit your lust, if you don't accept like you did you're an alcoholic and addict at your deepest level concession, you can't grow out of it. And whatever, you've heard the saying, hopefully, whatever you resist will always persist. Whatever you're resisting, whatever your pride is not going to look at, it's going to be there still. And the lesson will be presented in your life in many different situations. And you have the opportunity, if you bring God in the circumstance, to heal. What is this but a miracle of healing? But if you don't want to fucking look at it and you won't do it, well, you're not going to heal. And it's going to continue to plague your life. And then, but it will continue to plague your life. But like it says in the We Agnostics chapter, as we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis, we could no longer postpone or evade. We had to fearlessly face the proposition that God is everything or He is nothing. So you're going to have whatever the defect is, and it's going to back you into a fucking corner eventually, because it doesn't work anymore once you're sober. These things won't work for you. Lust won't work for you. Fucking anger won't work for you. It's a dubious luxury of normal people. There's certain things, none of these things work for you anymore. So at some point, it's going to back you into the corner where you're like, fuck, arrived at this point. We're squarely confronted with the question of faith. Am I going to give it to God now? Am I really going to fucking turn it over? We can't duck the issue anymore. We'd walk far over the bridge of reason, looking at our defect and what it's doing in our life. You've walked far over the bridge of reason. What's that? Meaning you're using the evidence of your senses to see what that defect is fucking doing. But somehow you couldn't quite step ashore. Had we not been leaning too heavily on reason, our own self, for that crutch, that last mile, and we didn't like to lose the support because we don't really trust yet. And we haven't been beaten enough in that area to fucking let it go. Middle paragraph, after this one, we're going to shut it down. So we did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. So that line, to me, ties back to a line in step 3. Our problems, we think, arise out of ourselves. So our problems that are causing our life, they're arising from deep down within us, based on the roots of those instincts, okay? And that's what this is kind of saying, right? We searched out the flaws in our makeup, the defects of character that are part of us in our makeup, which caused our failure. So it is these behaviors, these actions, these ideals, emotions, and attitudes that I fucking react out in is what is actually causing my failure. And that is what actually causes me to drink. So being convinced. There's the word convinced. I got you guys to circle that way back. for a reason, because right here, it's like being convinced. We got to redouble our efforts on the word convinced. Without a doubt. Without a fucking doubt. Am I convinced that my life run by me is not successful? Am I convinced that self is the problem? Yeah, most of us are convinced that self is the problem. So being convinced that self manifested itself in various ways is what had defeated us. So I've always been pointing my finger at you in the world saying, you fucked me. She fucked me. The church fucked me. Everybody's fucked me. But really, what I'm going to learn here is I fucked me. Nobody else is fucking me as bad as I fuck me. That's what we learn around here. So that's what defeats me. I defeat me. And it is those broken pieces of myself that fuck me. Okay? And the goal of this program is to take you from a baby that was whole, that was loving and everything perfect, and then you journeyed through life and you had your life's experiences. Now you have the fear, you have the fucking trauma, you have the manipulation, you have all these things that have happened on your journey of life, and now you're acting out in those things. And now we need to go through the processes slowly to heal these things millimeter by millimeter and get back to the fundamental idea of God. And the book says, God as we understood him. When did I understand God? When I pretty much was God as a baby and a little boy. Before life got its hands on me and broke me. And now the broken parts of me are acting out in the problems arise out of ourself, those instincts. But then it manifests into the behaviors that we call the defects of character. Lyle will say there's 4, which there is, but off of those 4 come many behaviors, right? There's many little behaviors, but at the core of all those is self-centered fear. And then at the core of the self-centered fear, it ties into one of the 4 instincts. And to me, the biggest one is emotional security. Why? Because we all want validation. We all want validation. So manifested itself in various ways what defeated us. So we considered its common manifestation. So before I go on, I'll finish with this. We are now at step 4, inventory pen to paper. We're now going to consider self and its common manifestations. What I want to highlight here is the word common means general ones. What about uncommon shit? That's important. You can't just do a set of steps and think you got it all covered. Because it's the uncommon shit that will get you later. So we have the common manifestations of self. The ones that we can see that are really probably easy to deal with or at least look at. Resentments, fear, and relationship conduct. Those are the common ones. What about the uncommon ones? That's really important for us to know as we finish this first set of steps and we go into our lives that there's deeper, more than common. So we got to figure those out. But those only will come through time, through you keeping a solid program. And those will reveal themselves organically as you work a solid program. If you don't work a solid program and you just get on with the business of fucking being okay for yourself in life, trust me, the shit that's uncommon, it's going to come up and it's going to bite you in the ass. And you're going to be fucking 1 or 2 or 3 years sober, ready to blow your fucking brains out.
Can you give us an example of an uncommon manifestation?
An example of an uncommon manifestation of self?
How about shame?
Shame is a driver of a lot of the defective character. And the shame will only be revealed through fucking years of working the program. So an uncommon manifestation of self is shame. It's self-worth. It's abandonment. And you bring up a good point. Self-pity is an uncommon manifestation of self. It's very sneaky. Okay? Morbid reflection. The victim. Martyrdom. Those ones are so hard to see. And when you're talking to your sponsor, You know, sometimes we have the ability to even hide that from our sponsor, but not even on purpose. And that's when I say cunning, powerful, and blindly, it fucking works under the surface. That's why we got to be so upfront and so open with the people that we work with in our lives as pillars. Because they're able to get to know you over time. And like, if I got to know you and I know that some of your go-tos are like self-pity or morbid reflection or playing the victim or something, I'd be always aware of that. And I could listen to you and I'm like, oh, fuck this. Yeah, this looks like your old pattern again. Although you've masked it with something. And then we're like, no, it's fucking, you're back in your victim mentality. You're playing the victim again. And then it's like, fuck, I am. Fuck, right? And then you're like, fuck. Then the weight gets lifted but now you got to put the work in again, right? So let's shut her down. Thank you for tuning in to the UDRcast. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. The viewpoints and the opinions expressed today were solely of the individual sharing them. If you resonated with this episode, please follow us and share this link with anyone that may benefit from it. Please visit us at Billwardlife to see everything that we have going on. We can recover, one person, one family, one community at a time.